All right, what's going on YouTube? So back with another video here. The car, I did drive it some on the two nozzles, not a lot, seemed to be okay. Haven't done any logging yet or anything major with that, but I did want to kind of give you a quick update on that portion of this video. The next part of the video, we'll be talking about my self-tuning journey with this car. We'll talk about the 91 octane. We will talk about E40. There may be some E50 stuff. If I have that, I will go ahead and put that in there. But I just wanted to cover that, going over just kind of the tuning process. Mainly it's more dyno numbers or virtual dyno numbers, to show you guys what you can kind of expect when you get to these custom tunes on stock turbo. So just wanted to cover that with you guys. This will be the intro to this video, and then here in just a second, for me it'll be a couple of minutes. For you, it'll be just a second. I will jump into 91 octane and ethanol number. The screen recording section here figured out. So first thing I want to cover is looking at the numbers. We're looking at gains, not necessarily overall numbers. We look at the gains when these tests are done. I'm using Virtual Dyno. Some people like it, some people don't. Some people prefer 60 to 130 times. I don't have a draggy. Draggies are cool. For me, this tells a lot of story about how the car is going to feel when we look at power under the curve. So you can do 60 to 130 times. Maybe eventually I might do 60 to 130 times if I pick up a draggy. But regardless, this is all done on the same road in the same section. And it's also done in fourth gear. I don't do fifth gear, at least at this power level. It gets traction in fourth. The issue is when you get to doing these types of pulls in fifth gear, you start getting to speeds that are a little excessive, in terms of trying to do it on a road. So where this is at when you run these type of logs, you're doing it right, right at the speed limit. So there's not an issue there. So I'm going to start with that. Number two, looking at the numbers. Like I said, we're looking at peak gains. Looking at when I get to the ethanol numbers, looking at those, comparing those to Dynojet numbers for a large company that's out there currently, the numbers are within a few horsepower, and that's looking at their baseline MHD E40 compared to mine. Also, on these numbers, these numbers are pretty close to what you would see in terms of a Dynojet number, even on a stock, or not a stock, but like a Dynojet number on a 91 octane off the shelf tune from MHD. So I just wanted to cover that as well. Now, the next thing too I'm going to cover is all of these are SAE numbers. All of this information in terms of barometric pressure and temperature is based off the sensor on the car. So you can look at the temperature and the barometric pressure outside of the car, but that's not going to tell you the whole story because that's not the air temperature that the car is going to get. I'm sure you could argue that barometric pressure and temperature may have an effect on traction or aerodynamics or whatnot, but when it comes down to looking at the numbers that I have and comparing it to cars that's been on a dyno, this is the most accurate way of doing it. And the barometric pressure is going to be based on what the sensor sees. So it sees it in a PSI. So from there, you just convert that to inches of mercury. And then air temperature, I base this on the air temperature at the sensor. So we'll get into the numbers now. I just wanted to cover that. Mothman tuned. That's kind of my alias at this point. So just in case you see Mothman, I try to name all of these the best way I can. And additionally, the other thing is I have a spreadsheet of all the data in terms of the runs, in terms of what gear it was in,
the weight, my weight, if I had any like crap in the car, like usually I have a laptop, um, or if I had like drinks or whatever, and then I try to keep an eye on fuel level, and then as well as temperature, barometric pressure, and I'll have notes in there. So I keep a lot of data on this as well. So I'll get the cat out of the bag. I'm not a light dude. You know, 315 pounds. That's what's on here. Usually it's about 315 with me and my laptop and a bottle of water. So we'll start here. 91 octane stage 2 run 2. The first run that I did was not good, so I just named it run 2. As we come in here, it's 406 and 444 is what it came out at. So there's that. The next thing is I've done some revisions on this, and then 91 octane final. This will be the final tune that I was able to achieve with the car. It is a little bit more. We went from 406 to 421. It's not a huge gain. The issue with this is I'm very octane limited. The off-the-shelf map had a lot of timing corrections early on. I mean, really at the lower end of the map, the top end of the map. So the fuel here, we have 91 octane. There's no ethanol. There's nothing in it to help. It's essentially, I would consider it the same as like a 91 ACN, Arizona, California, and Nevada. If it had a little bit of ethanol in it, I think I could get a little bit more out of it. But really, it's 91. It's pump gas. The car's not going to live on pump gas, so it's not necessarily meant to. It's not meant for me to beat the crap out of it on 91. So there's that number. The next thing is I ran methanol with just a 6-jet. This is a 70-30 mix, so 70% methanol, 30% distilled water. No changes to tune, only methanol. And then here is where we came in at. Not really any gains down here. More gains kind of up top, really after that, 4100 area. So I picked up 10 horse at what 5,000. It picked up probably closer to 20 horse. Yeah, because our peak number on this tune was out here. So it picked up here 20 horse. So that's good. Now part of the reason is it was richer. The car was trying to compensate. And then also really it's just a cooling effect. There's no more timing. There's no more boost. There's nothing else. So that's what that did. Now the next thing that I did was I did some revisions and added, timing boost, whatnot. In this one, I believe it was just timing was all that was added. So, you can see we went to 461 from 431. And I mean, right here at 5,300, 461 to 427 or 431. So 30 horse. So we picked up 30 horsepower on methanol with some more timing in it. So that's huge. I mean, if we look at, let's pull this and then let's look at the factory kind of tune here. So this would be this tune versus not the factory, I can see the factory, the MHD off the shelf tune, and we compare it to this. I mean, we're talking 55 horsepower and 44 foot-pounds of torque. A lot of this here is due to the fact of the way that boost is kind of tapered in. So boost is tapered in, and then obviously I'm running the car richer than what MHD did. MHD is probably looking at like a 12.9, 13.0. I'm in that kind of probably like 11.7, 11.8, just to have it cooled a little bit more and give myself a little bit more kind of safety net there. So pretty solid gain, considering it's methanol added. I mean, this is on a 91 octane tune, so I think that's really good. And then if we'll look at like methanol versus we'll just look at like the final without methanol. So it does have a little bit less down here, but one thing too I have to say is, when we do these runs, it's essentially start the log and hit the gas. So down here, because the car is making boost has got to come in, it's going to make less power. That's just how it is. So in this case, I would have hit the throttle at 2,600, versus here I had it at 2400. So that 200 RPM allowed the car to spool faster. So some of this you have to take with a grain of salt in terms of the lower end stuff, because it's very difficult to be perfect on this every single time. So I want to point that out. So really overall, quite a good gain on 91 octane. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, get all of my other data pulled up, and then we'll talk about the ethanol tunes. Information for the ethanol numbers. Looking at the E50 stuff, I didn't have really much there to help us with. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the E50 stuff out because I didn't really do much with it anyway. E40s seemed to be where the car was happy, so I left it there. So the first thing I'm going to get into is off the shelf E40. So this is an OTS E40 map made 474, 488. Now, once again, like we talked about, we're looking at overall gains. Now, if you pull up some videos, you can look on YouTube of OTS maps. This is going to be pretty close, within a few horsepower of what other people are seeing. So, starting with that, it was 474, 488. So I did some revisions. Obviously, 20. I was battling some limits and some safeties that the factory ECU has. It's a very complicated ECU. It's very different than what I'm used to, tuning back in the day. I tuned stuff on Chrome, so I had a Honda tuned on Chrome, and then I had a Turbo Scion TC with AEM FIC. So tuning with that was a lot different. You didn't have the safeties. Those were both very simple in terms of looking at your fuel and how much more fuel you needed to add. This ECU works significantly different than that, so it's definitely a little different. So after getting in and tuning on E40, was able to add a lot more here in the kind of the mid-range. So overall horsepower, it does start to drop up here versus which this line here should drop honestly a little bit more. It may have been the that section on that, but we're just going to leave it. But if we look up here, in terms of the horsepower we're gaining, it's gonna fall off. The turbo is going to run out of steam. It's not big enough. But kind of peak numbers here was 492, right? But if we look at it on an off-the-shelf map, we're talking 461. So we're talking 30 horsepower roughly gain up top. The mid-range, when we look at it here, we're talking, let's see, 377 to 438. So, about 60 horsepower gain in the mid-range. Definitely something you're going to feel. This here is going to be with the way that the turbo comes in. There's a lot of playing with the boost to be able to work around the limits of the factory high pressure fuel pump. So that's something else that, I'll show you here. I have a E40 with 70% meth. I'll show you one of the things that I dealt with and I was able to do, but I got a little crazy and pushed it, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But so here, the mid-range in terms of torque, this is a 488 torque to 579. And the peak comes in sooner, and it's actually kind of, I wouldn't say it's flat, but it's relatively level. So at the same area, this 579 to 480, I mean, you're almost 100 horsepower in foot-pounds of torque. It is extremely noticeable right there. Like I said, up top, we're kind of running out of steam, but I mean, you can see there's a huge gain. And I'm excited. This is a new ECU for me. It's something I've never tuned before, so I feel pretty confident in this. Now, as we get over, I will show you. This is this tune, the E40 tune with methanol added, no additional changes. So, it made less here. The car is trying to compensate, obviously, because it had some more fuel in it. Not a ton, but it did, because methanol is a fuel, right? We did gain some up here, so we went to 508 from 492. Let's see if there's a 490, so about 490, so about 18 horsepower, right? We lost some torque, right? It's going to happen, and the way that the ECU works is if it can close the throttle. So if there was any throttle closures, that's gonna affect it too. So I just wanted to see what it would do without any changes. So then we did some more tuning, and we come up with a final E40 here in the mid range. It if we look at the way that it comes in, I hit the boost later. Also ended up pulling a little bit of boost out of it anyway, due to some traction issues. This one shows that it was an 81 degree or a 79 degree intake air temp, but that day I think it was obviously cooler than that. So I was battling some traction issues there. So just to point that out. But that's our red line here. So a little bit of torque here, pulled out of it. And then up here, it did kind of mimic it and gain a little bit. It's 508, which is also what we were running on the E40 final, but it does kind of carry out a little bit more. When it gets to the ethanol at this point, I'm not spraying enough methanol to cool the charge air temperatures enough to be able to run any more timing. I've played with that. I've played with boost. It's not going to take it. It starts to have some timing correction. So that's one of the reasons why I'm going to a dual nozzle setup. Is with a dual nozzle setup with more methanol, I can probably get a little bit more timing out of it and maybe a hair bit more boost. I mean, I'm already on the limit of what this turbo is capable of. So just something else to think about with that. I don't know if this is necessarily the best representation of running it with methanol, but like I said, this is revision 12. Revision 6 is the one that is very, very spicy. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this one. Yeah, we'll go ahead and just pull this one up. So very spicy. We're talking an absolute crap ton of torque, 642 at peak here. Obviously, I got into it, 2,500, and it spooled. Basically, at this point, I was commanding all of the boost that I could command, and even here, the car pulled boost. It ran out of fuel system. It could not keep up. I think one of the only reasons why this helped was having some of that methanol. But if I would have had more methanol running to the car, we could have probably increased this, and ran a little bit more kind of out the, well, don't want to say the back end, but from 4,000 to 5,000 could have added some more. But looking at it, I mean, you can see that it's capable of doing it. It's fueling. There was quite a bit of timing correction on this. The car had timing correction. The car closed throttle, and it probably would have even been a little bit higher there in the mid range had it not closed. But 519 and 642 is what was capable on that. I think with a little bit more methanol, could probably see a little bit more. Once again, this is a journey, right? So I'm not a professional tuner. This is something that I'm doing for fun, that I enjoy. It's something I want to share with other people, and I think also just sharing these type of numbers is something that's very transparent. If anyone has, you guys have a map that you want to kind of get an idea of horsepower on, let me know. I can tell you what to log. You can send me an email with the log. I can convert it into the CSV file that this needs to be, and then load it in and give you an idea of what you're running. To get the most accurate, obviously, I would need your tire size and your weight. I'm not sure if there is, for guys that have BMWs. Let's see. I don't know if there's how much BMW stuff is in here. Yeah, so there is some in here. We would likely, if you have like an F80, we would have to probably go to like an M3 and then change some stuff in there, because the other thing that this takes into account is there's no M2s, there's no 340s. So we'd have to get something like maybe like a, something very similar, because this does take into account the um, the aerodynamic efficiency of the car as well. So, granted, we can put it in there and get you close. I mean, it's not going to be, if you have like a 340, we might not be able to get you down to the exact horsepower, but I mean, I think if you're within, 5 or 10 horsepower, you'll be fine. So, but once again, like I said, I wanted to compare these numbers, compare what other people were seeing. I mean, there's plenty of people out there on YouTube that do dyno videos of these, so you can look at, a dyno video of what a shop may have for like an off-the-shelf tune and kind of compare it and look at the type of gain that you can see. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you for watching the video. If you like it, hit the like button. You can subscribe, comment. Not sure how much more content's going to be coming out soon. I do have some more parts going on the Supra. However, hopefully they'll be on by the time this video comes out. But if not, then you'll get a video on that when I get it taken care of. So appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching, and God bless.